In case you still haven't seen Fleabag yet, I recommend you immediately pause this video and go straight to Prime Video so you can binge the whole thing. The show created by Phoebe Waller-Bridge not only dominated the 2016 and 2019 award season with its first and second seasons respectively, but also changed the way audiences think about comedy and drama. This seems like a lot to accomplish for a series with a total run of only 12 episodes, ranging in length from 23 to 27 minutes. And yet, Fleabag still manages to do so, proving to be one of the best crafted shows in TV history. How did it do it? In recent years, we have seen a prominent rise in dramedy shows, which, in case you're unfamiliar with, are series which incorporate elements and narrative arcs of both comedy and drama. Some of the best known examples of these are shows like Sex Education, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Orange is the New Black, and Russian Doll. However, one could argue that Fleabag is the best example of this genre, and that from now on, writers thinking to create a pilot for a dramedy show will look up to it in order to draw inspiration. In this video, we'll explore what Fleabag teaches us about writing a thought-provoking show capable of making audiences cry and laugh at the same time. To do so, we'll be breaking down the very first episode from the show to understand its DNA and the way Phoebe Waller-Bridge built the beginning of a story that has made fans all over the world fall in love with her work. The pilot episode of any series is supposed to introduce the audience to the core basics of the show, its characters, tone, premise, and the sort of fun and games we should expect from it. On top of that, the storyline presented on that first episode should also be interesting enough to keep viewers engaged and make them want to come back next week, or stream the next episode, to find out what happens next. In that sense, Fleabag follows the very basics of a traditional pilot episode. However, what sets this pilot apart is its very unique dialogues, narrative elements, and protagonist who, instead of presenting herself as an over-the-top fictional character, shines for her realism, which invariably reminds us of ourselves. In the episode's teaser, we're introduced to Fleabag as she welcomes a booty call at her house. Right off the bat, she breaks the fourth wall to explain to the audience what's happening and what she's thinking. One of the most distinguishable narrative elements from the show, which allows us to connect with her on a more intimate level. This element will be repeated throughout the episode and the rest of the series, serving as literal peeks into her mind to understand what she's thinking about. Phoebe Waller-Bridge has mentioned that one of the things she seeks to do while writing a script is constantly challenge herself to make it unpredictable and full of surprises that feel genuine. The breaking of the fourth wall may be one of the most obvious examples of this early on, as we don't expect a main character to alternate between talking with a character and revealing what they're thinking to the audience. However, this is far from the only surprising element about the pilot from Fleabag. The first act of the show has Fleabag interacting with a creepy-looking guy who we can tell by Fleabag's expression isn't attractive to her. In any other show, we could expect an uncomfortable moment followed by the protagonist running away from the weird stranger. And yet, Fleabag surprises us by ending up giving him her phone number because, as she says, she hates herself. These sorts of uncomfortable, unexpected, and yet somehow very relatable moments make the show feel more like a friend telling us about her fucked up experiences rather than a series in which all the characters seem to live in a different dimension than ours. During the first scenes, we're also introduced to the general tone and comic sense of the series, which, as I previously mentioned, is intertwined with dramatic beats that give the show a more complex feel. Phoebe Waller-Bridge explains that her technique consists of disarming the audience with comedy and laughter, only to later punch them in the gut with drama. We watch as Fleabag is denied the loan to keep her little cafe running for flashing the bank manager by mistake, witness her breakup with a near perfect boyfriend because of an incident involving her masturbating to Obama in front of him, and the introduction of the complicated dynamics between Fleabag and her sister. Throughout these sad and funny moments, we immediately understand who Fleabag is, where she's at in life, and how she approaches it. After getting a general idea of who Fleabag is, the second part of the pilot episode introduces us to the sort of fun and games, as well as the main premise of the show: the tragic and hysterical adventures of a dysfunctional modern woman trying to make sense out of life, love, and family. We learn that Fleabag doesn't feel comfortable talking about her feelings or being vulnerable with her sister, who, despite offering her a loan and taking her out for a drink, two things she clearly needs, is constantly turned down by her. Instead, Fleabag chooses to involve a stranger and eventually go out with a weird guy from earlier, even though she clearly doesn't feel thrilled about it. At the date, Fleabag steals from the guy's wallet and storms off after the guy refuses to go back to her place. In any other show, we could immediately pin Fleabag as an asshole by this point. However, since we have been literally looking into her mind and realizing how hard it's for her to be open and vulnerable to those who actually want to help her, as well as witnessing her struggle to get the money in a conventional way, we empathize with her. It's easier to connect with an imperfect character than a traditional hero who never does anything wrong, because, believe it or not, nobody's actually perfect in real life. It's clear that Phoebe Waller-Bridge had this in mind when crafting the character for Fleabag to make them more realistic. During different interviews, she has explained that when writing a character who is careless and unlikable on the outside, it's possible to make them more appealing to audiences by showing their humanity and pain. Besides that, there's another great element writers may use to make their characters more likable, even when they do unlikable things. Having them perform random acts of kindness would show redeeming qualities. Although Blake Snyder talks about this technique in his book Save the Cat, in which he explains that by having a character doing something noble, often for a stranger who is at disadvantage and unable to help themselves, it's easier for audiences to root for them. In the pilot episode of Fleabag, we have a Save the Cat moment after Fleabag leaves her date. While waiting for the bus, Fleabag notices a very drunk woman who can barely stand up. Instead of leaving her alone, Fleabag gets her a cab so she can safely get home. Another solution to make an ethically questionable protagonist more likable is to give us an even worse antagonist. Blake Snyder explains it best. When your hero is slightly damaged goods, or even potentially unlikable, make his enemy even more horrible. The scales of whom we like versus whom we hate are adjusted to perfect balance. Let the reading begin. By the end of the episode, we're introduced to Fleabag's absent father and godmother, who began a relationship with their father not long after their mother's death and eventually became their stepmother. If Fleabag is the imperfect protagonist struggling with life we cannot relate to, Godmother is the seemingly perfect asshole we all know and who can never pass the opportunity to make us feel like shit. Olivia Colman, who plays the Godmother in the series, does an amazing job of bringing down Fleabag with subtle remarks, expressions, and low punches which makes us hate her from her very first scene. Fleabag decides to steal a valuable sculpture from Godmother before she returns home, a decision that will have repercussions during the next episodes and will keep the story moving forward, inviting viewers to watch the next episode to discover what's about to happen next. In the very last scene, Fleabag reveals to her taxi driver that Beau, her former best friend and co-owner of the cafe she now handles by herself, killed herself by accident after her boyfriend slept with somebody else.
She decided to walk into a busy cycle lane, wanting to get tangled in a bike, thinking maybe. As it turns out, bikes go fast and flip you into the road. 3 people died. She's such a dick.
This last dialogue perfectly embodies everything the pilot presented to us and ultimately the DNA of the show. It's tragic, ridiculous, and unexpected. Overall, the perfect components for a great dramedy show. By the end of the episode, we have a good grasp of who Fleabag is, how she thinks, and why she does what she does. And even if there is still a lot to discover about her during the rest of the season, we as an audience feel completely hooked. Even if the pilot's ending is not a major cliffhanger, we are eager to find out what else this character is about to do next because, in a way, we have come to feel like she embodies a part of us which is not as often represented in other shows or movies. According to Phoebe Waller-Bridge, comedy and drama are intrinsically linked, and the trick to apply them both to a single show is finding the right balance. Upon analyzing the first episode of Fleabag, it's obvious that she managed to do just that by presenting us to an imperfect protagonist who perfectly embodies the sort of character flaws we're accustomed to see in real life, either in others or ourselves, and which often are the source of both sad and funny situations, similar to the ones we see on the show. Through a very specific tone, unique narrative elements, and well-defined characters, the pilot episode of Fleabag presents itself as a dramedy masterpiece which will be talked about for a very long time. Did you enjoy the pilot episode of Fleabag? What did it teach you? If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. It would mean a lot. I'll keep publishing more content on what TV has taught me, so don't forget to click on that notification bell. Thanks for watching.